Welcome to Working Smarter, Examining Content, Assessment, and Cognitive Load. We're excited to be here presenting as part of the EDUCAUSE annual conference. We will provide information about both of our backgrounds on the following slides. You'll have access to these following the presentation. I'm Dr. Kristen Betts. I'm a clinical professor in the School of Education at Drexel University. You'll find here information about my professional background and my research focus.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dana Kemery, and I'm an associate clinical professor at Drexel University, College of Nursing and Health Professions. Please review this slide to look at my background and my research interests. Thank you for coming.
In terms of an overview, we're going to begin talking about a paradigm shift in higher education. We'll look briefly at mind-brain and education science. We'll look at course design, specifically at content, assessment, and cognitive load. We'll then provide some examples from Drexel University's College of Nursing and Health Professions and School of Education. We'll wrap up just with some final comments about balancing content, assessment, and cognitive load across all learning formats. So we'll start with the disruption across educational systems worldwide. We went from in March of 2020 to what was primarily traditional face-to-face classrooms with some blended learning and online learning to really what was a quick pivot to hybrid and primarily online or emergency remote instruction. One of the challenges that we have with that pivot and where we are in higher education is this focus on student success. How can we ensure that our students are successful across all learning formats, particularly when our students, a large percentage of them, had not planned to be enrolled in online programs, and our faculty had not necessarily planned to teach in hybrid or online formats. So one of the things we need to think about is the critical role that faculty have in not only teaching their courses, but being part of this pivot in terms of the learning formats, how they design their courses and engage their students across all learning formats. So when we look at what we know about different pedagogical practices, there's an area called mind-brain education science that is informed through neuroscience, psychology, and education. And it's bringing together current and emerging research that focuses very much in alignment with universal design for learning, the fact that human brains are unique as human faces. Individuals' brains are differently prepared for different learning tasks. New learning is influenced by prior learning. The brain changes constantly with experience. One of the most exciting areas of research from neuroscience is neuroplasticity, the fact that the brain continues to change over the lifetime. And lastly, there is no new learning without some form of attention and some form of memory. So when we look at the principles of mind-brain education, we have to understand that whether we're teaching our students face-to-face in a classroom setting, in a hybrid or an online setting, we need to understand that each student is truly unique. So it's not simply taking our course content and putting it online. We have to be very strategic. We have to be very intentional in how we present our content, how we engage our students in multiple means of engagement, representation, action, and expression. When we look at the brain, as we shared, talking about neuroplasticity, our brains change continuously in response to our actions and expressions. And this has to be a critical driver in how we design our courses, how we teach our courses, and how we engage our students in learning activities and assessments, because in order to change the brain, students must be active participants, and they must be able to apply and transfer their knowledge, skills, and experiences. Knowing that experience is key, we need to look at 3 types of interaction. How are students engaged in instructor-to-student interaction? student-to-content interaction, as well as student-to-student interaction. When we take courses and we develop them face-to-face, we know that typically you'll be on campus anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes for each course, possibly 2 to 3 times a week. One of the things we need to look at, especially if we have to pivot to a hybrid or an online format, is how much time are we actually putting into our courses? Are we working with a quarter system, a semester system, a trimester? Is our system based on 50 minutes in class, 50 minutes out of class? Because typically an online class will follow a structure of an on-campus classroom. Or is it 50 minutes in class, 60 minutes out of class? Or is it 60 minutes in class, 60 minutes out of class, all divided by a 60-minute factor? When we look at this, it's very important because this determines basically in alignment with the Carnegie Unit and credit hours, how many minutes a week students are supposed to be engaged in their classroom and outside of the classroom. If we look at the federal regulations, they say that in terms of online learning, there is no seat time. So we still need to be cognizant though, if a course is a course, and regardless of enrollment, students are supposed to meet stated learning outcomes. How much time should we be planning for students to be engaged actively in that course and also be engaged in assessment and working with instructors and their peers? Is it 450 minutes a week, 7.5 hours a week, 75 hours a quarter? Are we looking at 540 minutes? Are we looking at 112.5 hours if it's a semester? So these are the considerations that need to be made in terms of especially balancing content and cognitive load.
Different things that we need to consider when balancing the cognitive load, the assessment in a course, is what is in your curriculum? How much stuff are you expecting your students to take in, take hold, and engage with, and lastly, understand? They need time to practice. Is there time built in for that? For studying, for research, going over just simply your lectures for the week? Students need time to be able to pay attention to what's going on in front of them on the screen and not be distracted so that they can start to encode, process the things that they're looking at, bringing that together with their understanding, their prior knowledge, so that they can hold on to it and use it when we ask them during assessment what they've learned. It's retrieval. This is how students learn. Without those pieces being strategically planned, students don't have time for all of this. And it can be like drinking from a fire hose, where they get content constantly, but no time to encode, consolidate, to be able to retrieve. Think about that as you're thinking about your courses. Think about your practice. What are you doing with and to your students when you present them with information? The way you're packaging it, how they can work in it. This all has terms and names, so we're going to go over those now. It's called cognitive load management, right? So you have extraneous cognitive load, right? So extraneous cognitive load is how we put things forward to students. You don't want extra things on the screen or in their readings or in their videos that they don't need to learn the content that you're presenting. So maybe a cat video is really cute and fun, but it may not help them learn how to add factors, right? So you need to take that out. Think about, how does this help them build? That's their, and that creates a pull or a load on their intrinsic load. If we have too much extrinsic load, the students can't manage the complexity of the new things that we're showing them and link that to their prior learning and what they've experienced before. So they need a lower level of extraneous load so that they have more of their brain power to use on how to manipulate these new things that are coming into their brain, right? And connecting it to the things that they've learned before, right? maybe sometimes way before. Germane load, that term, has to do with how we design a course, right? Using UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. Thinking about how students are going to be able to process this information, and maybe by chunking it out or spacing it, interleaving, showing them something and bringing it back in after you show them something else, putting the parts together like a huge puzzle, and thinking in Universal Design for Learning, we can do that. We can make that germane load optimum so that one thing flows from one thing to another, and it all gets put into that large puzzle of understanding for our students. Our completion rates traditionally in higher education have been a little problematic when you think about it. So our traditional students, 64.7% graduated within 6 years. That's prior to COVID, right? Non-traditional students, their success rate, their graduation rate is lower, right? So we think we've all, really know this, right? That's like 48.9%. But that's a huge challenge when it comes to education. When our learners come to us, they come to us ready to learn, excited for this new challenge and this new opportunity. They don't want to be unsuccessful, and not at these rates where these students are unsuccessful. Because for every 64.7% that we have that are successful, there's a huge percentage that are not successful. With our non-traditional students, it is so much larger. We want them not to be discouraged or disheartened by their educational experiences, but we want to be lifted and challenged and able to move on to their next educational journey, to their next academic life.
In all of this, when we're looking, regardless of learning format, needs to align with our federal regulations first and foremost. Most of our higher education institutions are Title IV institutions, so they receive some type of title for funding. Accreditation, everything needs to align with accreditation. The Carnegie Unit, many schools and colleges, in addition to accreditation, have licensure that they must align with. So being able to design courses that are intentionally designed to engage students, but balance that workload, just as Dana talked about, to support student success is critical. We also need to consider the final rules that are coming out in July 2021 that deal particularly with online learning in regular and substantive interaction and how we engage our students online. And this is really important because when the world was disrupted by COVID-19 in spring of 2020, there was a wonderful article that came out in EDUCAUSE, and it focused on what online learning is: careful instructional design, planning, systemic model, careful consideration, impact on quality of the instruction. Well, the reality is this is what we should be doing with all of our courses. At Drexel University, we have aligned all of our practices to ensure that we are meeting this criteria. And we're doing it with the concept of pivotal pedagogy. How are our instructors and instructional designers selecting pedagogical practices that align with the learning formats in which they're teaching? And how are we prepared to pivot when needed?
So at Drexel University, we're doing a lot of different things to be able to shift, move, and pivot when we need to. Knowing that a very flexible and mobile structure is important, especially during these times. So we have collaboration across units, across disciplines, and across colleges, across the university, where we look at things like, what does our curriculum development look like? What are the calculations that we're using specifically to those Carnegie units? That may be a new concept to a lot of our faculty peers. We use cloud-based applications. Our cloud-based application allows us to share documents and images and lectures, not just between faculty, but with our students. We think really long and hard about that student to student, student to instructor, and student to content interaction and engagement. We need all of those pieces. We are looking at the MISHI accreditation standards full force and head on. Even during this time, we are prepping for our next MISHI visit, and that's extremely important. And looking at the ways where we are excelling and where we need some work is very, very eye-opening. We know what the federal regulations are. Many of us can state them by chapter and verse by this point, and we are very, very sensitive to those and making sure we meet those. And looking at regular interaction and what that really means and how that's really planned for. Not that it just happens, but that we have planned for it and we can articulate that. And finally, UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, it's all about how you package anything. It's all about the packaging. So I am in the College of Nursing and Health Professions, and our best practices have been being built for a very long time. So we are health professions. So as health professionals, we need to worry about those licensure standards that Kristen talked about. We have several accrediting bodies that work with different programs in our school. We have nurse practitioners, we have nurses, state boards of nurses, physical therapy, anesthesia, art therapies, behavioral arts, and behavioral health counseling. So, and that's just a few of our programs. So we have a lot of different external stakeholders that we have to be mindful about. So even before COVID started, we as a college had agreed to a standardized course shelf format where every single faculty member gets a standardized shell where they can build their content. And those are based in weeks or modules because we feel that that type of flow helps the students. We have a standardized syllabi so that all of the things that students need to know about the courses, about the structure of the university is consistent throughout so that when they're in one course, they know where to go for the things that they're going to need to be successful as students because it's always in the same place. It's like putting your keys in the same place when you come home. You don't have to think about it. They're looking for our Office of Disability Resources. The link is on the same page. Course objectives are always explained to the students in the syllabi as well as interspersed throughout the courses. So we link those course objectives with modular or weekly objectives, which are linked directly to the assignments and the activities that the students are going to be doing. That way a student can clearly see where they're going from an activity to an assignment to the week or the module objective that they had to meet, and then finally to that overall course objective that they're trying to reach at the end, that academic success that they all want. We've done curriculum mapping across programs, inter-program, inter-courses, across courses. It's really, really helped using mind maps and sitting down and talking out what our courses look like. So we make sure we're building at a rate that students can grasp. We don't want to give them content and information in one nursing course that they can't build off of from the previous nursing course. It's very important. We've done this by a lot of faculty support and development throughout our college. We have commingled faculty support and faculty development sessions where we have all of the entire college with all the health professions, and then we have specific to departments, specific to maybe nursing or graduate nursing. Always looking at accreditation because we have so many accreditors that we need to think about. When we shifted COVID, we needed to think about alternative delivery. So the one picture, the ladies with the boxes, they're actually setting up our sim lab with the sim man. That's that little person at the bottom. That's a physical space, right? A face-to-face space where nursing and health professions practice their craft, if you will. So we run through simulations with mannequins and with each other and practice all the things that health professions would do eventually in the hospitals. That had to change because we couldn't go to regular clinical experiences in hospitals and other healthcare environments throughout our city and neighboring states. Could not do that, would not allow students in because it wasn't safe. Our exam processes needed to change as well. Our simulations had to change from a face-to-face type of physical environment interaction to a virtual one. That was really interesting. We still had the same content. We still had to deliver that, but it had to be delivered differently. Advising, which was something that was really, really disrupted by COVID, had to be looked at in an alternative delivery way. And faculty support, which a lot of times was in person, had to be delivered again in a different way. We used a lot of different tools, some of which faculty were really used to using, but only using in the particular environment that they were used to being in. Think about cognitive load and now how faculty had to manage that, right? And juggle the different things that were happening. So faculty had been using Flipgrid for a while. Flipgrid's a really great video, kind of down and dirty video discussions can be used in Flipgrid. Thank you K through 12 for Flipgrid. But we started using that more robustly and more broadly. And we had people who were using it over time that could assist their faculty peers who were interested in using video-based discussion with their students. We have a lovely tool called Practice, and Practice is just what it says. It gives the students the ability to practice things that they would do in a professional environment, but in a video-based format asynchronously. So video prompt, they respond like they're that person coming into the patient's room or into a lecture or into another scenario, and how would they address the scenario? They act it out. And then they get to see their peers' reviews of that, as well as an expert, right? So it's really great. It allows them to practice that skill. VoiceThread, again, another video-based system. Top Hat was used primarily in the classroom, in the physical environment. We leveraged it online. ATI, lots of different resources in there for nursing that we were able to curate a little bit better. We had video archives. Please, if you don't learn anything from this, save your stuff. You may need artifacts for later. So in our archives from our simulation lab, we had videos that were made while the students were actually engaged in activity. And we were able to leverage those in the virtual space when we had to, when we couldn't be face-to-face. And this virtual escape room was a really cool twist on the physical escape room that you saw them setting up in the pictures prior. They leveraged it into the online space so that the students could still do their escape room, which is a case study, right, in a case study format, but they could do it virtually, together, collaborative learning, thinking about the problems, thinking about what they've been exposed to and how they would solve these particular student problems or patient problems. So Flipgrid, there's a little embedded Flipgrid at the top corner in the top left. That's just an example of what that looked like in a course shell. This to the right with the John Smith there, that is our virtual escape room. Our faculty are doing wonderful things with virtual escape room. And the picture on the bottom is Practice, and that's just the interface for that practice system. So integrating these and many other different tools and different experiences for our students allowed them to have a robust clinical experience when we had to switch quickly to remote instruction. Part of a process can't get better unless you continuously improve. So as nurses and health professions, we're always focused on how to make things better in patient care environments. It is the same for us in education. We want to constantly improve, constantly update and change in a meaningful way so that we can better support our students. Formative assessments all along with not just the students, but with our faculty too. We did check-ins with our faculty peers. What's going on? How's it going? Let me look at your thing and let me make sure it's working okay. A very strong faculty support network that we created just for CNHP, which we were actually honored to have leveraged university-wide. So now CNHP is kind of the wheelhouse for that. And it's a phenomenal network of educators, both those asking for help and those offering help. We are formulating so much stronger collaborative bonds with our faculty peers across the university that we may never have met before, learning really great stuff. We developed multiple quick starts specifically for CNHP, for faculty and for students. Quick start to learning online and quick start to teaching online, not online teaching like planned, but remote. So what do you need down and dirty to get up and running in a matter of days. So we could convert a course that's traditionally face-to-face right now within probably 48 hours with assistance from our team. And our advisors, they have been the wheelhouse of this entire thing. They have been the center. Our advisors have been willing to shift and change. They're all working virtually. They're all working remotely, still meeting with students, still supporting faculty, and just helping students understand that their success has not been ripped from them because we've had this huge environmental shift, that we are here, we've got them, right? And they, or your advisors, got you. So we all support each other.
Well, you've heard from the College of Nursing and Health Professions. So now we're going to look at the School of Education. So one of the examples that I'll provide comes from a specific graduate program. At Drexel University, we have a culture of assessment, and it is so important to always be engaged in assessment, especially if you're preparing for accreditation, different licensure reviews. So we have something called the Program Alignment and Review process. Our program participated in this. It's basically 1 year long, and it helps through the Provost's office to identify your programmatic strengths, areas of growth, and innovation. So I'm going to share a couple of best practices from a master's program in higher education leadership. We did a full redesign based on our PAR review process. We decided our program, which had started in 2005, had really hit the point that we needed to redesign and relaunch the entire program. We put together an advisory board, a curriculum advisory board, and we redesigned all 14 courses. In fact, our core is now interdisciplinary in everything from the course content to the instructional design to the assessment has been aligned with the considerations of cognitive load, as we talked about. We launched this fall, which is exciting. We did have a critical lens. As shared, the program and course alignment, first and foremost, was MindBrain Education science, making sure that we were in alignment with neuroscience, psychology, in didactics or education. Everything integrated, universal design for learning, especially the human learning process. We aligned with middle states, the Department of Education, all of the federal regulations, and most importantly, we made sure that the courses are designed so they are already in alignment with the new regulations that are coming out in July 2021. So we took each course and we wanted to look to find out in terms of a quarter how our courses would align. Are we actually working smarter? So Dana brought up a good point. When we think about cognitive load, we might simply be thinking about our students without thinking about the workload of our faculty as well. So we have been using an application called Interact 123, which creates a course conspectus, but allows us to look at where our course aligns with the instructor-student, student-to-student, and content-to-student interaction. So the question is how much? So the credit hour or Carnegie Unit gives you a bottom line threshold, but we're looking at the data through data analytics to identify how much is too much. At what point do students have so much content that they're not able to perform as well as they could? Or there may be too little, or is there too much video, or too much of one content, or not enough assessment? So in looking at a course conspectus, we're able to identify things that might lead to early attrition. Is it front-loaded? Do you have too much content in the first couple of weeks? So maybe the attrition isn't the course, it isn't the instructor, it's the students not being prepared. It may just be too much information up front. Or maybe it's academic performance at the end where students have done well and suddenly that seems to shift. So if we know that for Drexel University on a quarter system, we're supposed to be at around 450 minutes, so we may go clearly above that, at what point is the threshold too much that it affects student performance and retention and completion? So with that note, I'll have Dana just provide some wrap-up statements.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen. Well, thank you for for attending today. We hope that this information is helpful to you in your programs. Please reach out to us if you have any questions whatsoever about anything you've seen here today. Our emails are there to the right of your screen, and have a wonderful day.
We look forward to seeing you online.